Today we are talking with Sam Amirante, the man who represented John Wayne Gacy, as well as Danny Broderick. Both have just authored a new book, John Wayne Gacy, Defending a Monster. Sam, how did you come to represent John Wayne Gacy?
I knew Gacy from the Democratic organization in Norwood Park, or he knew me, let's put it that way. And I was the chief public defender in the northwest suburban area of Chicago and handled some high-profile cases. Gacy was a clout guy, and he looked for people who knew other people. When the police were following him, he decided to call me for whatever reason. He thought I knew somebody or I could help him out. At the time, I was just in the process of leaving the public defender's office. He called me, he said, "Sam, can you do me a favor?" I'm going to be my first client.
Danny, what were your thoughts of John Wayne Gacy when the trial was going on, and specifically when you found out that Sam represented him?
I was in law school at the time, so it was very interesting to me. I used to see this guy on TV almost every single night. My thoughts were, with the concept that everyone, even this horrendous killer, gets a trial. So the controversy that was raging at the time and the fact that there were individuals that would think in terms of not giving a fair trial and everything, I believe at the time and still do that everybody gets a fair trial.
What brought you both together to write this book?
Well, you know, over the years, I've thought about doing this project, and I could never find anybody who could really, who knew me, who knew my personality. And I saw that Danny wrote a book, When Money Talks, Buford Tucker Listens. And I got a hold of a copy of the book, and I said, my God, this guy's good. And at the time, I was working with somebody else doing my book, and the person I was working with just didn't have the flavor, didn't understand the passion of a trial lawyer, of somebody who really believes in what they do. People seem to think that you take a case like Gacy, you think he's guilty, you're not going to do your best. You always do your best. And Danny and I started talking about it, and I said, boy, I always wanted to do this book. This is the guy to do it. And we just sort of, I don't know, we just started talking. Now we're best of friends again. And
yeah.
He did a great job.
I remember you saying, hey, maybe you should do the Gacy book. There was a woman who was involved in the project for a short time, and she was writing it apologetically, like you were sorry for having had done it. That's just not the way it's done.
Sam, what was it like to go through this case again 30 years later?
You know, it's like so many other things in life. No matter how much time passes, it's like you're there. It's nightmarish in a way. You experience all the same feelings over again. I mean, there's some funny parts, and I would read the pages, and it just put me right back to where I was 30 years ago. It's like we never skipped a beat.
Danny, what makes this book different from any other John Wayne Gacy book that's been written? There have been many.
The way we approach this book is to write it like a novel. It reads like a novel, and so our approach is different than the other books that have been written. The book's really more about Sam than it is about Gacy. The reason that I could do that is because, one, I know Sam, I know his voice. The other thing is that this is a story that is so fascinating, and to my mind, what makes a good book is a good story.
It's a lawyer story. It's written like a novel. It's a nonfiction novel, and it's a story of more than about Gacy. A lot of things have been written about Gacy. This is a story about David and Goliath.
Yeah.
It's the lone lawyer, turned out to be two lawyers, against the system, against the world. The world hated us, and that's what the story's about. What the lawyer goes through, and you don't see that kind of thing. It's a trial drama. It's a story, and it's a trial drama. And he put it on the pages just great.
Why tell this story now, 30 years later, 17 years after his execution?
30-some years ago, when I argued to the jury, when Bob Mott and I argued this case, we said, study this guy. Find out what makes him tick. Find out, and that issue is still out there. That's what causes something like this to happen in a human being. Some of the things have happened of late with bullying over the website, over homophobia and things like that. These are all issues that were issues in the Gacy case and are very relevant today. And there's still those lessons to be learned and those studies to be made to prevent things like this from happening in the future. Hopefully, one of these days, somebody could do something about it.
Yeah, the way Gacy was raised is mentioned and dealt with in the book. This guy was a guy who hated himself due to the times back then. As a matter of fact, there was an issue that came up at trial that would never come up in this day and age. One of the witnesses were potentially going to be asked if he ever had sex, homosexual sex with Gacy on the stand. And the lawyer representing that witness wanted to take the Fifth Amendment. Now, the Fifth Amendment prevents self-incrimination. It doesn't prevent self-embarrassment. But at the time, it was actually an issue. Today, that issue is front and center, and how it happens and how it's treated in our society is still as relevant today as it was back then.
Sam, didn't at one point Gacy want to fire you in the trial?
Yeah, at least at one point. Sometimes he talked about hiring F. Lee Bailey, and he said, no, you could teach F. Lee Bailey a few things. And he was really against the insanity defense. The defense was going in pretty good. Bob and I thought the defense was going in pretty good. And he was really upset that all these people were saying he was crazy. We all knew he was abnormal. Terry Sullivan certainly argued that. But he was upset with his insanity defense.
How do you think this book will be received by the families of the victims?
That's a tough one. From day one of the case, being dads ourselves, and I'd look at the victim's family then, particularly the Piest family, and there were so many warm, loving families, and I would look at those people come into the courtroom day in and day out, and my heart went out to them, and I just wanted to reach out and apologize, but you can't apologize for
First of
doing
all,
your
you can't
job.
apologize for someone else.
Doing your job,
Right.
and for doing your job. But people relate. And when you're the lawyer, people
They do kind of
relate
meld
you
it
as the
together.
person. You're the same as that person. Mm-hmm. And I can see the way that people looked at me, and that has never left me. So when I think about the book, I really wonder how it will be received. We reserve a special section at the very end of the book. In a way, the book should be dedicated to these young men, young boys. Back during the trial, I said if we could all join hands and bring these boys back to life, I would join with everybody else in seeking death for Gacy, but you can't do that. And as a result of the case, I wrote another thing called the I-Search Law, and was responsible for replacing thousands and thousands of kids with their families.
I tried to be as respectful to the families. There wasn't a moment while we were writing this book that we weren't thinking about that. You really do have it in mind that somebody's going to someday read this, and some of those people are in the book. That's the one thing that's true about writing a true story. So I tried to be as respectful to, and particularly to the Piest family, but to the victims' families, and still keep true to the actual facts.
The hurt never goes away.
Yeah.
I remember one time Mr. Piest came up to me and said, Sam, I know you had to do a job. I hold no malice against you. And I thought it was the classiest, most decent thing. I mean, here's a man who has suffered so much, his family suffered so much, and actually understood my role in this case as a defense lawyer, which is a very powerful role in our country, the cornerstone of our country, where everybody, including the Gacys of the world, have a right to a defense. And for Mr. Piest to come up to me, I just hope all the other families out there who still survive, and the surviving relatives, understand that not the fight for John Gacy goes on, but the fight for truth, the fight for right, the fight for justice, and the fight to make sure that no other families suffer or have to suffer the way they suffered. And I hope they understand that, and that's all I can ever hope for.
Danny, where can people get this book? When will it be available?
It has a release date of August 1st. If anybody wants to kind of keep tabs on when it's going to be released, and frankly, we're going to be putting out excerpts and interesting stuff. We may even have some giveaways. We'll see about that. The website is defendingamonster.com. The Facebook page is John Wayne Gacy, Defending a Monster.
I want to thank you both for joining me today, and I look forward to talking with you again sometime.